In the early 19, in the quiet town of Key West, Florida, a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, or Gene as his family called him, received a peculiar gift from one of the family servants. The servant, who was rumored to be well-versed in dark practices and voodoo rituals, handed Gene a life-sized doll. This doll was unlike any other sailor-suited figure, complete with a small toy lion whose eerie black eyes seemed to follow anyone who dared look into them. Gene, charmed by the doll, named it Robert, after himself, and the two became inseparable. But soon, the Otto family would learn that Robert the doll was far from an ordinary toy. Gene's relationship with Robert grew unsettlingly intense. He spoke to Robert constantly, having full conversations with him as if he were a real boy. Gene's parents would hear their son talking to the doll in his room, but what truly unsettled them was when they started hearing an entirely different voice answering back a deep, low, unsettling tone that sounded nothing like Gene's young voice. At first, they dismissed it as a child's game, yet the eerie atmosphere in their home made them uneasy. Strange events soon plagued the Otto household. At night, Gene would wake up screaming, his room a wreck. When his parents would rush in to see what had happened, they'd find overturned furniture, broken toys, and belongings scattered around. Gene would cry out in fear, telling his parents, Robert did it. He insisted that the doll had moved on its own, that it had attacked him or thrown things around in anger. Other times, family members or guests would hear footsteps coming from empty rooms or soft giggling. But no one could find the source. The Otto family also began noticing that Robert the doll had an uncanny habit of appearing in different parts of the house. They would find him sitting in different rooms, with his dark eyes staring into nothingness, his smile frozen. Gene's parents swore they hadn't moved him, and no one could explain how the doll kept relocating. Neighbors, too, would say they saw Robert looking out from the windows, moving from one side of the house to another, even when the Ottos weren't home. As Gene grew older, the strange events continued. He left home to study art, spending years abroad in New York and Paris. During this time, Robert stayed behind in the Otto home, but his eerie presence seemed to linger in the old house. Eventually, Gene's parents passed away, and he returned to his childhood home with his new wife, Anne. When he found Robert still there, he seemed oddly happy to be reunited with his old friend, treating the doll as if it were an old companion. Anne, however, felt differently. She sensed something unnatural about Robert and grew increasingly uncomfortable in his presence. Gene placed Robert in a special chair by a window where he could watch the street outside. He even began speaking to the doll again, and as time passed, Anne noticed Gene seemed almost under Robert's control. At times, she could hear Gene arguing with the doll, his voice laced with frustration or pleading, as if Robert had demands he could not ignore. Gene's behavior became erratic, his mood darkening whenever Anne mentioned moving the doll out of sight. Eventually, Anne insisted that Robert be placed in the attic. She could no longer bear his watchful gaze, but Robert did not seem to like being hidden away. Almost daily, the couple would find Robert back in his chair by the window. The doll's unexplained returns became so frequent that Anne began to avoid the room entirely, deeply unnerved by the way his eyes seemed to follow her. Gene passed away in 1974, and a new family moved into the Otto home, completely unaware of the doll's history. They found Robert in the attic, still dressed in his little sailor suit, his dark eyes staring at them. Not long after moving in, the family began experiencing the same strange phenomena. Footsteps in the empty hallways, giggles echoing from rooms they swore were empty, and objects in their home moving seemingly on their own. Their daughter claimed that Robert had tried to hurt her, and after too many chilling encounters, they decided to remove the doll from the house entirely. Robert the doll was eventually donated to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, where he was placed inside a glass case. But even there, Robert's hauntings continued. Museum staff and visitors reported an eerie atmosphere around his display. Electronics malfunctioned in his presence, lights flickered, and cameras often refused to work. Some visitors claimed they saw the doll's expression change, that his smile would fade, or his gaze would seem to grow sharper, more hostile. Over time, a strange tradition grew around Robert the Doll. People who dared to take his photo without first asking his permission often reported a series of misfortunes afterward: accidents, illnesses, even deaths. The museum began receiving letters from visitors, apologizing for disrespecting Robert and begging for his forgiveness. These letters, filled with heartfelt apologies, line the walls of Robert's exhibit to this day, a chilling testament to the power he seems to hold over those who mock or disregard him. Stories of Robert's curse have only grown over the years, solidifying his reputation as one of the most haunted objects in the world. Many who visit feel a chill when they look into his eyes, as though something watches back, something with a life and will of its own. Some say it's the spirit of the servant who originally gifted him. Others claim Robert holds a piece of Gene's troubled soul. Whatever the explanation, Robert the Doll remains a deeply unsettling figure, a silent, ever-watchful entity whose legacy continues to haunt those who cross his path, leaving a trail of fear, mystery, and tragedy.
Enjoyed the content? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more awesome videos your way. Don't forget to click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.